What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Sky Wars. I'm back! I'm sure there's going to be another video coming out explaining where I've been and what I'm doing, but this video is not about that. This video is about my hate for the book that is supposedly a masterpiece known as Lord of the Flies. For those of you that didn't know, I've been needing to read this all summer because I have a summer project thing for English class, because don't we just love English class? On this channel, it's our favorite class. But anyways, yeah, I hate Lord of the Flies because it's like, okay, I have read a total of 12 pages for this book, man. It's extremely boring. It is literally... So I get that the entire plot, right? These boys are trapped on an island, and I know that in the later parts of the book, they turn on each other. War, civil war, yeah. Super fun. Massive battle. Lots of people die. I'm excited for that part. It's all of the build-up. I mean, hell, they spent like 3 pages describing the way a tree moved in the wind. It's not worth it, man. Also, it was written by a Brit in the 1950s. That says enough about it. The fact that they used the word picked instead of walked in multiple places. What is this writing? What? Who decided to let this be considered a staple of literature? This is not, I promise you, this is not the Messiah of books. It's just not. I mean, picked? What? How is that even close to the word walked? Just say walked, trotted, moved, stepped. I don't care. There are so many things I can think of that aren't picked that you could have used. That's just like the first thing that came to mind. That was the first one I could think of. That was a weird thing that it said instead of what it should have said. But I'm like, dude, why? Why is this what I have to read? Is this really what we are now classifying as a staple of literature? Because we also praise Shakespeare as a god when he literally wrote the same story with different characters. It's the same trope every time. And the rule is, don't get attached to anyone, because they're gonna commit suicide. Or they're gonna die. That's the rule with Shakespeare, man. You can't get attached to anyone. They're gonna die or they're gonna kill themselves. It's gonna be... They either get murdered or they take their own life. That's it. There's no other option with Shakespeare. I'm pretty sure he was just secretly depressed, didn't know how to say it, so he wrote a bunch of people killing themselves instead. I don't know, man. It's like, dude, why are these what we consider to be, you know, the peak of human creativity and intelligence with writing? They're not. They really aren't. I promise you, I've written better for Timebreaker. The plot is more intricate. It's just better. I'm sorry. I'm not one to pat myself on the back too much, but it is. It really is just superior to Shakespeare, to Lord of the Flies. I don't care what. Compared to literally any book, I have written Timebreaker better. There's a lot more to it. A lot more depth, a lot more plot. Okay. Oh, hey, they died. I was not sure that they were about to do that, but okay. But anyways, yeah, I don't understand why we're praising, like, Shakespeare and William Golding as, like, absolute geniuses of literature. They were at the time, I'm sure. You know, they made huge breakthroughs when it comes to... I thought that was Big Miller for a second. When it comes to who, you know, like, how we write today. But how we write today changed as things, like, it changed with the times, you know? We can't look at the way things were written back then and be like, oh, well, these are masterpieces now, too. No. Look at, for example, what I would consider a modern masterpiece, The Hunger Games. Amazing, well-told story that reflects on every issue we have in the world when it comes to, like, the political side of things. It is such an amazing, like, embodiment of those issues. Whereas Lord of the Flies, that's just chaos. It's not real, like, any reflection. There's no relating to the current state of the world or anything. It is just a different thing, because this is also, like, World War II times whenever they're this takes place. So it's like, you can't really judge what a modern, like, you can't call it a masterpiece when it hasn't been written for our times. It was written, you know, almost 100 years ago. That's just my feelings on it. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me that we're praising these things still as if, you know, they still hold so much truth and they're still massive breakthroughs. They're not. We have new modern masterpieces that we should be celebrating. Yeah, so my game crashed upon trying to mine that redstone. I love my PlayStation. Anyways, so yeah, I think, honestly, the thing about modern, like, deciding on why do the clouds exist. I have clouds off. Anyways, deciding on what makes modern masterpieces, first of all, it has to be modern. Not something written in the last century. You know, if it was written in the 1900s, it's probably not still a masterpiece. Take, for example, I hate that I keep going back to this, but Hunger Games is a current modern masterpiece because the world is the way, like, there are a lot of parallels between that world and our world. And that's why I think, in my mind at least, what makes a masterpiece is something that is either completely relatable to the current state of the world, or the exact opposite, it is entirely different. Which is, again, why I say Timebreaker has been written better than, you know, these stories written by Shakespeare, this Lord of the Flies book. I do believe that because, you know, it's been written in a way that it's not anything like our world. It is a complete distraction, and it implies the Chekhov's gun style of writing, which, for those of you that don't know, it's a concept in writing where no detail is unimportant, no detail goes unused. And we employ that in every way we possibly can. I mean, you guys don't know that yet because, you know, we've been a bit slow with getting out lore streams. Those will be coming back soon. But that's why I believe Timebreaker has been written better, is because, you know, every detail matters. And not only does every detail matter, but we don't drag out things that don't need to be dragged out. Stuff happens when it happens. And it's different than it's so completely the opposite of the current state of the world that it is it's like a distraction. You get to look at this different world and be like, oh, wow, this is cool. Let's focus on their problem instead of ours, right? It's a nice distraction. Whereas, because, you know, Lord of the Flies, I keep saying it doesn't relate to our world, but it's based on, you know, it follows the event, or it's right around the time of World War II. That in itself isn't, you know, the best start, because that did happen. That's why I said it has to be the opposite. It can't have any parallels to our world, because that just, you don't want to read. If you're trying to read, you're either trying to read and see parallels so that your eyes can be more open about our current world, or you're trying to read and be like, oh, well, this is a nice distraction from our world. Why? Let's continue reading this. If you're listening to a story, if you're watching a story, it doesn't matter. You don't want it to be like your world, or the opposite. You want it to be exactly like your world in a way that you can relate to. That is what makes good stories, in my opinion, which, again, is why I keep saying masterpieces cannot be judged based on what was written over 50 years ago, is because 50 years ago the world was very, very different than it is today. 50 years ago the world was still, well, I almost said the world was still dominated by religion. It is still, but it was a different kind. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on it, at least. Anyways, guys, that was another episode of Skywards. If you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe. There's nothing else. I mean, I guess you could like, because that pushes it back out into the algorithm. But, you know, if you don't feel like doing that, then don't. Just, please. It's a giant red button. Why wouldn't you push it? It's free! Dude, I'm going to pull the dream skid. Hold on. Not only can I tell you that the majority of you aren't subscribed, but it's free and it helps out a ton. Thanks, guys.